Ladies and gentlemen, it's Spoilerin time, and on today's episode, we will finish as we always do, or at least for a while longer, The Shield. This time, season 7, episode 4. We will talk about the latest Rick and Morty. We're actually going to spoil 500 Days of Summer because Brian was on a plane, and it's one of the movies he watched that I also watched. We're not going to spoil Mr. Robot because of current events that prevented it from airing, but we'll talk about why we think that was, and we will talk about the fact that I lost the movie draft. But let's start, Brian Brushwood, by welcoming our guests.
Yeah, man. Father Robert Balsar joining us for 17 minutes and counting before they reboot the network on you?
It depends on how fast they're counting over there. I know that they're a little upset that I ran a fiber into the network closet.
Well, good. Well, we'll
didn't
have
say you couldn't, right?
We'll
Exactly.
Take you while
There's
we
no
can
signs
keep
there.
you. But in the meantime, let's start off by talking about the latest on the movie draft.
It's not over yet, Brian.
Technically.
The season ends September 4th, a mere 4 days away.
Well, you never know. They call it the
So-
September surprise.
Yeah, imagine it when somebody realized Fantastic Four was actually great.
And keep in mind, all you have to do is in the next 4 days pull in $310 million. I think you could do it.
Everyone, go see Mission Impossible again. Now.
Team Cordkillers is the heir apparent, right?
I mean, it's
the
all
winners.
over but the counting. Yeah.
And again, DTNS only barely scraped. It's the only team that did better than the single movie of Jurassic World, single best buy of the entire game.
The only consolation I have, and that Jenny and I have, is that we can laugh in the face of everyone who laughed at us when we said, well, it's not a lock.
Yeah, well, congratulations on second place at least. I'll tell you what, we're going to have Malango and Christy Cates on the show next. I guess that's not next week, the week after.
Week after, right?
Yeah, next time we go live.
So they can laugh in our face.
I'm thrilled. Night Attack did respectable. We did fourth place, so we were not too far down. There was a time that GFQ looked like they were dominating, and Frog Pants keeps their long-term record of scraping the bottom of the barrel.
You know who else dominated this season of the movie draft besides Team Cordkillers of Malongo and Christy Cates?
Who's that?
Movie League Mike with his weekly Crumb Dum updates.
Oh my gosh, how fantastic have those been? In-depth
good.
analysis. They always show up at diamondclub.reddit.com. You can find those. Love watching all of those.
And if you would like to continue to experience Movie League Mike's amazing voice, dailytechnewsshow.com now has him posting every Saturday a recap of the week's tech news.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, and it's awesome.
In the meantime, there is still up for debate. We have 3 players within just $10-15 million of each other in the Chat Realm League. We got Jedi Wing Knight at $1.2 billion, $1.27 billion. JW Morrison at $1.26 billion, and slightly behind that, Photocyclist X. Congratulations to you guys. We'll see exactly which one of you is the big winner once we have our final coronation in 2 weeks. Meanwhile, what are we going to talk about?
I think let's hold off on the email because it's about Rick and Morty until
Okay.
we talk about Rick and Morty. And let's get into talking about Mr. Robot before they pull Father Robert's fiber out of the
Our
closet.
weird non-news segment where it's like we don't actually know anything about Mr. Robot, but we talked about in the main show how this is one of the weirdest global spoilers because this is the final episode. Nobody knows what's going on. We had the giant revelation, and in my favorite line when he says, "You knew it all along, didn't you?" I'm going to have to say it, aren't I? You know, this very meta, you figured out that this is Fight Club before I did. And he says, I am Mr. Robot. And he has this realization that Mr. Robot is this fragment of his own psyche that's his dad. And then he remembers this and that he's broken and that he's the creator of society along with his sister and that he's the one with the manifesto. And what does all this mean? I actually was satisfied with the last episode as being the end of the series. But then, we had our discussion about numbering nomenclature and figured out that, there's the finale, and they announced that they're not going to show it. They're going to postpone it a week.
Here's the actual Twitter post in case you didn't hear it before or see it. The previously filmed season finale of Mr. Robot contains a graphic scene similar in nature to today's tragic events in Virginia. This was written on August 26th. Out of respect to the victims, their families and colleagues, and our viewers, we are postponing tonight's episode. Father Robert, that, as you pointed out on Cordkillers, seems to spoil what is going to happen in the finale episode. What do you think that is?
Well, of course, there's going to be a shooting. It's going to be one of these gut punches where he's trying to come to grips with the fact that he's behind everything. Which, by the way, I have to say, I do want to get your input on this, which is Do you think they should have done that in the first series of the show to bring out the Fight Club aspect? Because I thought they would hold on to that for at least a little bit longer. It seems very strange to have that sort of mini climax where he comes to the realization that he's behind everything. And I don't know. I like the show, but it felt so weird to have that there.
No, I disagree because I've been trained by Game of Thrones to have the big twist happen the second to last episode of each season, and plus also, I mean, the very first thing I think I pitched you on it saying that holy crap, it's Fight Club the TV series, because anyone who's seen Fight Club knows the source material. It's identical in tone. It's the mission, the stated mission of destroying the records. You erase the debt. That's a way for people to rise up. And the fact that there's this figure that never really interacts but is around the whole time. I think if you knew, you knew. And it was sort of like this awesome Band-Aid ripped off where I was like, oh, good. We're all in the same boat now. I really don't know what comes next. And that was very, very exciting.
I get what Father Robert's saying, though. You would think the main conceit could be, is Mr. Robot real, for a few more seasons. But yeah. I think what they're showing is, especially with that quote of you knew it the whole time, that's not the main conceit. The main conceit is what is real. Like his father being a part of his imagination is the smallest slice of now the unreliable narrator that is Elliot. Those men in suits that have been following him around, are they real?
Right.
His sister is definitely real, but what about everybody else in F Society? Like, it starts to actually, what I've done with it since that reveal is go, oh, okay, this now casts doubt on lots of other things, which to me makes it even more interesting.
Well, and think about this. By closing this one mystery, we open up really exciting other ones. For example, the idea, what's the name of the bad guy? The conniving dude who speaks.
I call him Blonde
Tyrell. No, it's something that
Tyrell. I also call him me.
He's got a name that's the same as the guy from Blade Runner.
Tyrell.
Yeah, Tyrell Corporation. Yeah.
More human than human.
So imagine if in the next season, all of a sudden, Tyrell becomes a sympathetic character. This is a murderer, somebody who is obsessed with the corporate ladder, who's yanked out of that structure, who's been told in no uncertain terms that his wife is going to leave him unless he amounts to something. And what if he joins F Society? What if all of a sudden he tries to corrupt or pervert the purpose of F Society to be something that will redeem him in his wife's eyes as a father and so on? I don't know. I'm very excited to see how Tyrell, because I think Tyrell is in a very different way every bit as fascinating a character as Elliot, and every bit as well acted and well executed. Here's one thing I do want to say. Fight Club came out at a weird, interesting time, and it is a miracle of distribution that it came out that year and not just 2 years later, because Fight Club came out at this time in a post-Cold War society. We didn't know who to hate, and people, young men didn't know what they were supposed to be. Are we all supposed to be worker bees or whatever? And it just spoke to this rage that made it a beautiful piece of art. Unfortunately, I don't know, artistically, it ends with almost a celebratory moment as they destroy the 6 buildings that have the backup tapes to all the debt or whatever. Just 2 years later, let's say it was on the schedule for late 2001. That movie never would have happened. It wouldn't have resonated. And I remember feeling weird. I had just bought the DVD. I was watching it on the road. 9/11 happened. And I was like, wow, the message of this is fundamentally altered in the post 9/11 world. We live in this, which makes me understand their hypersensitivity about whatever this scene is with this shooting, this graphic shooting that's similar to the news story. It makes me think,
must be a shooting that happens on camera.
Yeah.
I can't imagine that it's a direct analog with reporters involved or anything, but I bet it's a live.
It could be. It's probably like an F Society live execution or something like that, or maybe someone's in the middle. You could see someone with the F Society mask talking.
It's probably everybody watching.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So in that regard, I don't envy their position, and I think they're handling it well, but it'll be interesting.
That's a lot to say about an episode that didn't happen.
Yeah.
Shall we move on to the manic pixie dream witch that is Zooey Deschanel in 500 Days of Summer?
Yeah. Okay, so before we talk, I just watched it, and the only things I knew going into it was that Brant Hughes told me repeatedly I needed to watch it, and that it's one of his favorite movies. And watching it, I could see why, and I could see the ways it would influence Brant's directorial style. But what do you remember of it before I could tell you what it impressed upon me?
I remember it was the first time I ever saw what's his name?
Joseph Gordon-Levitt.
Joseph Gordon-Levitt, and I liked him. I thought he was really good in it.
You saw him in Third Rock from the Sun as a kid.
Never watched Third Rock.
Oh wow, all right.
So I probably watched a couple episodes, but yeah, this is when I found out about Joseph Gordon-Levitt. It's actually, I knew Zooey Deschanel, but it was the first time I'd really seen her in a meaty role.
Wait, was this after Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy?
Yeah, this was after Hitchhikers, and I think she'd been in a sci-fi special as well.
Oh,
a few other things.
She was in the OZ.
Yeah. But this is like, oh, okay, she can really sink her teeth into this one. And I thought that it was a great exploration of those relationships that are one-sided. And as a romantic comedy goes, it was better than the normal romantic comedy formula because it followed the romantic comedy, and Eileen really liked it because it was a romantic comedy, but it wasn't it wasn't the kind of romantic comedy where I knew every moment exactly what was going to happen next.
Do we still have Father Robert on?
No, he just dropped out.
Okay, great. Good. Screw that guy. We never liked him.
No.
So absolutely not true and could be taken out of context. So let's just be clear that Brian's kidding.
Sure. As far as you know. No, we love Father Robert, and we're sorry to see him go. I wanted to get his perspective on this, but spoiler alert, I am going to spoil the movie. It's great because this is the story, 2/3 of this, a decent third of it is the falling in love part, and traditionally that's what these movies are about. But this movie is primarily about the rage and confusion.
And there's no happy ending.
Yes, exactly. And it's interesting because I did have a relationship in high school, my first serious relationship, that ended, in a breakup, and so I identified with a lot of the loss and rage that was conveyed in it, and yet the whole time I'm watching it. There's this like tickle in the back of my head. I'm like, and again, keep in mind, my relationship with Bonnie, we fell in love and have stayed in love forever. So in that regard, it didn't really resonate with that. But it did remind me kind of like Breakfast at Tiffany's, where you had this enchanting person who plays by her own rules and stuff. So I told Bonnie she needed to watch it. But as I'm watching it, there's this tickle in the back of my mind, and I'm like, I feel like there's some other relationship that this feels like, where it's like I'm deeply in love. Hold on,
because I know where you're going with that. I also have a relationship that I had in Austin when I was independent before I'd ever met Eileen.
Yep.
And same sort of thing. Like, I am so happy with Eileen, but a part of me watched this movie and was like, yep. That was that relationship I had with that woman who I was really into, and she was kind of into me, and it just never got going.
Again, right? Because most of the movie is about how it's broken and wrong and the rage that comes with that.
Right. Exactly. So I'm with you up until this point.
So I have this tickling, and I'm like, I feel like there's some other relationship this resonates with. There's this girl, and she's enchanting, and she's wildly creative. She has her own agenda. She makes it clear that I'm not the most important thing. Oh my God. I'm in love with my daughter who's getting ready to turn 12.
In a perfectly platonic way. We're not talking about creepy. You're just saying, I'm attached to this person who maybe I care more about
than she cares about me. And I realized that I'm at the beginning of this. I'm only going to fall more in love with all of my daughters, but that realizing that it's going to end with her leaving me and marrying some other man. It was this fascinating.
Not some other man.
Well, I mean,
she's not married.
Marrying a man, but you know what I mean. Like, I'm gonna have to go and sit and smile and be happy as some guy takes away.
Says every dad everywhere.
Yeah, I know. It was an amazing moment. It was
interesting.
At any rate, it was gorgeous. It was beautiful. It was very well done. I told Bonnie she had to drop everything and watch it. Bonnie, like yearly, will watch Breakfast at Tiffany's, and I feel like this is every bit as good and kind of resonates in that same frequency.
All right, let's talk about Rick and Morty. Today's episode, which was called Rick something.
No. The gods must be crazy. The Ricks must be crazy. Yes.
Which has one of my favorite conceits, and it's actually a fairly simple conceit, and it's even been done before, which is the world within a world within a world, but they do it so well.
Yeah, I'll tell you what. It's becoming a habit, Tom. Every time I seem to watch Rick and Morty, I think, this is the best episode yet. And this one was great because, unlike last week, which I had seen previously, so it wasn't entirely new. This was entirely new, and I just loved it. Every bit of the dialogue, and again, it probably helps that I watched so much Harmontown or listen to so much Harmontown, you hear Dan Harmon kind of throw together plots in the air, and you could kind of tell the hooks that he used, and like little moments.
But here's the thing, and I don't listen to Harmontown. I don't know anything about Harmon. I watch Rick and Morty, and I get the sensibility, and I get the sense of humor, and I love it. And there are parts where I'm like, if it were me, I'd have Rick say this here, and he does, and I'm happy. It's not like he's gonna say this and then I'm disappointed. It's like I want him. I'm cheering for the Rick moments, which you're telling me are the Harmon moments.
Oh, absolutely. Well, the self-referential bits I feel like are, but then maybe I'm wrong about it. Whereas like the bits that seem to be more like the musings of somebody who just watched The Dark Crystal, or he's remembering watching The Dark Crystal 20 years ago. That's more Justin Roiland to me. And again, that's all speculation, and that's my guess. But for example, they do the cold open. They set up the whole thing of going into the battery, and then they do the credit sequence, and then they come back, and and I love the moments where they call out the conceits that they're doing, because Morty's like, "Oh, where are we, Rick?" And Rick's like, "Wait, don't you remember 8 seconds ago, Morty, when I said let's go inside this battery? And when we're here, I didn't act surprised, did I? So clearly we must be inside the battery." Okay, Rick, I get it. I mean, it's like I loved all that.
And then it's like that would be an episode. The battery within a battery within a battery would be an episode. Yet they just go the extra mile and lay that little Summer backstory in the car.
Oh, with the TARDIS, I mean the car.
Yeah, with the car that's going to protect her despite her best wishes. The car that was like, well, you're making this difficult, but I'm going to come up with a solution. I will negotiate peace between the spider people.
And what's great is they obey the rules.
Yeah.
She gives rules, and the car's like, well, I guess I got to work within those now. And that moment where I forget what she said, where it's like, I'm going to say if I'm not comfortable, and then the seat reclines back for her. And the fact that the final the ultimate solution that the car comes up with is super creative and actually does work, and yet ruins the stated
the whole
objective.
Point was to get ice cream,
right?
Did you get the Inception call? I mean, there's an obvious Inception call out with the whole concept, right?
Sure.
But there's that one point they throw out like, yeah, but time passes more slowly in the other battery when you're in the sub-universe, and they follow that in Summer's story as well.
Yes.
Like, I don't know if you notice, and I don't know if it's exactly accurate, but like what's happening in Summer's world slows down as they get farther into the world.
It takes longer.
And then speeds up when they come back out.
Well, and the guy's saying like, you have 10 seconds.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden giant plot chunks are going 5. And so, it's so well crafted. So good. Congratulations to Justin Roiland and Dan Harmon for bringing real magic to television.
Speaking of magic and television, let's finish up with our Shield. Well, we're not finishing up, but
do you guys want to talk about the letter?
Spoilerin time episode by talking about episode 4 of the Shield, Genocide, which I was telling Brian before the show, I'm having a hard time remembering what happened in a particular episode, even though I just watched it, because the Vic Mackey story about trying to play the Armenians against the Mexicans, trying to deal with Pezuela and Rezian at the same time, trying to wrangle Shane, trying to deal with Gardaki, not okay with having Shane, like just seems like one big long story.
Yes, real quick. Do you want to pause now and read our Rick and Morty letter, or save it until afterwards?
Crap.
Yeah,
that's why you were trying to get me to stop.
Yeah. Let's just keep going. We'll read the letter afterwards.
We'll read a Rick and Morty letter afterwards. So don't go anywhere.
Okay.
Shoot, totally forgot that. Sorry, Sarah. Yeah. So the Shield is really good. That's where
so specifically,
but no, I mean, like, it has become less of an episodic when you're talking about Vic, and then you reminded me, like, remember, it's the episode is mostly about Wagenbach and Billings. I actually don't feel like the episode was mostly about them, but I do feel like that is the only thing that I can identify as being from that episode, right?
Everything else kind of mashes together, right? So on the Vic Mackey side of things, you of course have him. Vic Mackey is now taking wilder and less Machiavellian, less well thought out Machiavellian. Yeah. He's throwing long bombs, right? Because he's got nothing to lose, and he sees the clock running out. Meanwhile, his family is spiraling out of control as you see his daughter goes to visit Danielle, and meet her step brother. Yeah. And just, has this contempt and says terrible things about her dad, which is kind of doubly weird because that's
really her
actually
dad.
Michael Chiklis's daughter.
Yeah.
Acting that. And then, but meanwhile, And at this point, you're starting to see like even Shane, and certainly Gardaki's in the background for this episode. Shane is in the background for this episode. Vic just shows up to be enraged and try to broker this peace agreement. What
it felt like to me was Vic is running from place to place. Like Vic is putting out fires this episode. And you get one of those magical moments, which has happened before in The Shield, which is Vic thinks he can control this and thinks he can control that. And then suddenly both things erupt at the same time. And he's got to try to control two things or three at once. And it is all difficult and it looks impossible. For instance, trying to broker a deal between the Mexicans and the Armenians when Vic is the only reason that there is a deal, and he has lied to both sides, but he's going to be bold enough to walk into the room and say, hey, you guys all know me, right? Like, and play it off, and then have the Armenians double cross him and say, oh, well, we don't have the box.
By the way,
but we needed to get you here so we could tell you that we don't have the box and you'd believe us.
In Magic, we call it a dual reality routine, where what you do is you withhold information from some parties so that you say the same thing to both parties, but it means fundamentally different things to it. There's a brilliant example of that in that peace negotiation.
Yeah. So to me, this was all about Vic running wild, and then Aceveda trying to
realizing like they're married now. This is the first time you see Aceveda like we're both filthy. We're both in it. I'm no better than Vic now. Yeah. And I'm trying to play the game that Vic's a little more experienced than me. Although that was the one moment that I felt like Vic was truly in charge, was when he was talking to Aceveda, and Aceveda kind of was beta dog underneath Vic. Although he growled and there was a bit of posturing, but normally Vic happens to the world. This entire episode, the world happened to Vic. Yeah. And we're seeing more of that as things get tighter and tighter at the end. We also had more of the development with him and the chick from ICE, where he's trying
Andrea,
to... Exactly.
Walking Dead.
I didn't even realize that was the same actress. That's amazing.
So the fact that she is actually an informant, she's in the box, right?
Yeah.
So we don't know what she has told Pezuela and what she hasn't. But Vic basically just goes, well, yes, she could totally screw us all.
Yes, exactly. And so you're seeing that, again, another gamble. Meanwhile, the whole Wagenbach Billings thing, I think it was important that become the first chapter, because clearly they're setting up more investigation of this kid. Wagenbach suspects this kid actually set up the break-in so that he could kill a person, so he could feel what it's like, and it would look.
This is the Agent Coulson story.
Yes,
right. We had the guy who played Agent Coulson in an earlier season, kind of fool Wagenbach,
right? And
Wagenbach wouldn't give up. Even because he knew he was guilty, and he ended up getting him.
Well, and it's weird to see the relationship, and when you start off the series, you don't expect to see two partners who kind of hate each other, and yet know they value the work more than their petty disagreements, because it's clear that Billings is rolling his eyes and is just biding his time until he's out.
Have you ever admitted not knowing anything?
Yeah. Exactly. And yet Billings clearly does a good job when he decides to tune in and do it. For example, when he distracts the mother during questioning, gives a little knock so that Wagenbach has a quick 5 minutes to actually interrogate the kid and then back off. I actually really dug the dynamic of two guys good at their job, neither of which like each other, one of which barely even wants to try. Like that's a dynamic we don't see much in television very often.
We didn't get any advance on the vending machine story. That was my only regret.
The real issue of the Shield,
which is really the overarching arc in the Shield. But where is my coffee machine still working? I don't know. Anyway, just looking forward to Game Face.
Yeah, man. Coming up soon. Getting to the end. Everything's moving quicker.
And that is it for Spoilerin Time. Thank you to Father Robert Balacer. We're sorry that his fiber got pulled and he had to leave unexpectedly. But we appreciate him being on Cordkillers and on Spoilerin Time. Go find him on the Twit Network, twit.tv. He does This Week in Enterprise Tech, Know How, and Padre's Corner. And you can also follow him on Twitter at Padre SJ. Is that?
Padre SJ on Twitter, and that's it
for Spoilerin Time. We will spoil you in 2 weeks.
Wait, we got a letter. We got a letter.
Oh, why do I have a block on Sarah's letter?
Real quick.
Okay, back to Rick and Morty. Go ahead and read it.
No, you
I don't deserve to read it. Sarah's letter.
Well, I'm going to sound like an ass reading it because
Okay, it
Sarah
says, by the way, Brian, you were so right about Rick's suicide attempt on Rick and Morty. Autoerotic assimilation. What a brilliant episode title. I totally missed it and went back to rewatch the end. I even remembered thinking at the time, what was the point of that scene? Hey, I don't agree with you often, but when you're right, you're right. Thanks for turning me on to Rick and Morty. There's a lot of that grosses me out, but the sci-fi is really on point. It geekily cherishes yet routinely surpasses all our favorite sci-fi tropes.
Yeah, man. Yeah, thank you so much, Sarah.
still
Sarah
don't
wrote a
think he's
really
right.
long letter, so I'm glad we were able to get both parts in there.
So now we will spoil you. It's quite possible that we will spoil Mr. Robot next week, even though we are going to be gone on Monday for DragonCon. So you may get a surprise episode midweek. If not, we will be back in 2 weeks for full-on Cordkillers and Spoilerin time.
Diamond Club hopes you have enjoyed this program.